It's a psalm of David. And it's a psalm where David finds himself in this state of utter despair. It's painful, really, to read this psalm. It's so bad that he's unable to eat. He can't sleep. All he can do is pray and cry. It's so bad that he pleads with the Lord, cries out to the Lord for mercy from the Lord, who then in response hearkens unto the voice of his cry. I want you to hang on to that word hearkens, because it means more than just hears. He hearkens unto the voice of our cry. That's actually my prayer journal. It's titled, the file name is titled, Hearken unto the voice of my cry, O Lord. Hearken. What I want to do is first read this psalm. There's only 10 verses in it. Follow along with me, and as you do, I want you to notice this change that happens beginning in verse 8. Now, we're told that this psalm is to the chief musician, and it was to be played with stringed instruments, and even more specifically on an 8-stringed harp. And then we're also told that it was a psalm of David. Verse 1. O Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger, nor chasten me in your hot displeasure. Have mercy on me, O Lord, for I am weak. O Lord, heal me, for my bones are troubled. My soul also is greatly troubled. But you, O Lord, how long? Return, O Lord. Deliver me. Oh, save me for your mercy's sake. For in death there is no remembrance of you. In the grave, who will give you thanks? I am weary with my groaning. All night long I make my bed swim. I drench my couch with my tears. My eye wastes away because of grief. It grows old because of my enemies, all my enemies. Now notice verse 8. Depart from me, all you workers of iniquity, for the Lord has heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord has heard my supplication. The Lord, keyword, will receive my prayer. Let all my enemies be ashamed and greatly troubled. Let them turn back and be ashamed suddenly. Wow, I like that. What follows are 7 encouraging, even life-changing truths. You'll forgive my overuse of that. But for lack of a better way to communicate it, they are life-changing truths. And they're woven into the fabric of this psalm. And the first one is in the title alone, even before we get to verse 1. And it's that God is the God of new beginnings. We have our first one with this detail of an 8-stringed harp to the chief musician. You have to ask yourself, why do we need that detail? It's got to be there for a reason. Oh, it is. Now, there is some debate about who the chief musician is. Commentators offer their speculation, but personally, I'm the belief that the chief musician is the Lord himself. And David is writing this song, really this cry. You know how some songs are really a cry? And this is a song he writes to the Lord, the chief musician. Now, why the detail of the number 8? Well, the number 8 in Scripture is the number of new beginnings. The number 7 we know is the number of completion. 7 days complete a week. 7 notes complete a musical scale. 7 colors, the rainbow. And the 8th begins the new week, the new musical scale. 8 is the number of new beginnings. I am personally, again, of the belief that this detail is here because David is crying out for mercy, and he's pleading with the Lord for a new beginning. God is the God of new beginnings. You know how sometimes we'll say, it's cliche, that's okay. God's the God of second chances. Oh, it's better than that. God's the God of second chances and third chances and fourth chances and fifth chances and ad infinitum. He's the God of new beginnings. The second one is in verses 1 and 2, and it's that God is the God of mercy. Now here, David cries out. He's begging God. He's pleading with God. And he's asking of God not to rebuke him or chastise him. Apparently there was some sin that he's acknowledging. And right out of the chute, to his credit, he starts out this way. And to me, I think that this is important because it speaks to how we should always start our prayer by posturing ourselves as sinners in need of mercy. It's the desperation, the humbling of oneself, the acknowledging, oh God, be merciful to me. You know, mercy and grace are roommates, if I can say it like that. As one so aptly noted, mercy is God not giving us what we do deserve, and grace is God giving us what we don't deserve. I'll take both. I need both. Oh, how I need both. But God is a merciful God. God is a gracious God. It seems that David is so troubled that it has affected his health physically to the degree in which he asked God to heal his body. And it's interesting to note that we're not really told specifically what it is or what it was that had caused David to be so weary, so troubled. I really believe that's God's design. And I'll explain why I say that. If there was specificity here, we're prone to either dismiss it or think that, well, this doesn't really apply to me because that's not my area of struggle and difficulty. I think about the Apostle Paul, the thorn in the flesh, as we affectionately refer to it. We don't know what that thorn was. We just know that Paul pleaded with God, begged God 3 times to remove it, and God, in His grace, which is sufficient, said, "I'm not gonna remove it." And apparently, whatever this thorn was so horrific that it was tormenting him, and he refers to it as Satan buffeting him and tormenting him, and God said, "I'm not going to remove it because it's keeping you humbly dependent upon me and me alone." Because, see, he was exalted to the third heaven and given a glimpse. And this was God's way of keeping him rooted and grounded and humbled and reliant and dependent upon him. So we then can take and fill in that blank of, oh, that's my thorn in the flesh. That's exactly by God's design. Same thing is true here with David. This brings us to the third one. God, and this is a biggie, by the way, God is the God of perfect timing. David says that in addition to his physical illness from this painful trial, whatever it is that he's in, he's also emotionally troubled, and he says, greatly in his soul. Dare I say that he's having an emotional breakdown? You know, it's kind of sad, and I just, if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I just need to mention this. It's really sad when Christians don't feel safe to be able to open up and share honestly for fear of people looking at them as not having enough faith, being spiritually weak. And they feel, and that's why it is, by the way, it doesn't excuse it, it explains it, that Christians put on this facade. Hey, you know how it is, right? Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. No, you're not. But I'm not going to tell you that. Oh, would to God that we as Christians could just say, you know what, I'm not doing very good. In fact, I really need prayer. Everything is falling apart in my life. I'm just at my wit's end. I'm hanging on by a thread. And I need somebody to come alongside of me. I need prayer. I need encouragement. I need somebody that will love me enough to just lift me up. Help me out. This is a nervous breakdown. He's breaking down. And if this weren't bad enough, in this physical and emotional pain, he cries out and he asks, but you, O Lord, how long? How long, Lord? To me, this is, if you were to ask me what one of the most difficult things for us is in the midst of a trial like this would have to be it. It's the, Lord, why are you allowing this to happen for such a prolonged period of time? You know, we can have a crisis of faith where we doubt, but then you can also, on the other side of that, have a crisis of faith because you don't doubt. You know what God could do in an instant, but doesn't. Why, Lord? How long, Lord? It seems that God deemed it fit to leave David in this miserable state for an elongated period of time. And we don't know why. And David doesn't know why. And that's why he's pleading and crying out to the Lord. But here's the thing for all of us like David. God's timing is perfect. God knows what he's doing. It's been said that God is never late, but God is never early either. And if the truth be made known, you don't want him to be early because his timing is perfect. And sometimes the pain is so great, the trial's so hard, and it seems like there's no end in sight. But God knows the end from the beginning. God is doing something. And even if he could, we wouldn't be able to understand it. What do I mean? You know how it is when we say, why, God? And it's like God saying, it's not that I won't tell you, it's that I can't. Because even if I did, you would just have a jillion more why questions. And the reason for that is because I'm infinite and you are but finite. And there's no way in your fallen, finite state that I can impart to you that which is infinite. I know the end from the beginning. My timing is perfect. Just wait, you'll see. You know how we say that? That's actually Psalm 27, verses 13 and 14. You could caption that psalm, a life verse for me, with those words. Just wait, you'll see. Oh, I would have given up. I would have lost heart. I almost did, by the way, David would say, had it not been for my confidence that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And then it's like he's talking to himself. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. I think it's Psalm 42 and 43, which some believe were just one psalm, where David goes in and out of talking to himself. I know they have clinical terms for this, but that's not what he's doing. He says, "Oh, my soul, why be in such despair? For you will again have reason to praise the Lord." Just wait, you'll see. Don't give up. And he says that to himself in Psalm 27, 13 and 14 as well. Years ago, I heard a clever quip that has always stayed with me. It's also been a great encouragement to me. It goes like this. If the timing's wrong, God says slow. If the request is wrong, God says no. If I'm wrong, God says grow. But if the timing is right, the request is right, and I'm right, God says go. So, rest in that. Trust in that. Maybe you're at that place where you just think, I just can't take it anymore. I can't go on anymore. No. Just wait. You'll see. God's timing is perfect. The fourth one is in verse 4, and it's that God is the God of deliverance. Once again, David is pleading with the Lord for mercy. He's asking God to return and deliver him and save him. And what's really important to understand here is that David isn't asking God to do this for his sake. Rather, he's asking that it be for his mercy's sake. In other words, and this is important, please don't miss this, because we do this, by the way. It's not really deliberate. It's really unwittingly. It's maybe even just unknowingly, innocently even, where we'll pray and we'll ask God, we'll plead with God, and then we'll sort of attach to it this meriting of it. Lord, you know how I've served you, and oh, that's the basis, huh? Oh, Lord, and don't do that. I do it all the time, by the way, so I shouldn't just say don't do that like I'm talking down to you. I'm talking to myself, so stop looking at me like that. I do it all the time. Lord, I'm serving you. It's like the Lord saying, oh, is that the basis upon which I'm to answer and hearken unto the voice of your cry? No, it's not because of that, Lord. It's because of your mercy. Because, God, you're a merciful God. Deliver me, oh God, on that basis. Because, see, he's pleading on the basis of who God is and how God is, which is wisdom. Because not delivering him is inconsistent with God's mercy. Stay with me. You know, in the Old Testament, many times, guys like Moses would pray. And it was like they were reminding God, like he needed to be reminded. It was not that wasn't why they were doing it. But they were saying, Lord, you know, for your sake. Because you're a holy God. You're a loving God. You're a merciful God. And never imagine God in heaven going, that's right, I am. I got to do this. Right? That's not it. It's more for us to be reminded that this is who God is. And for God to not deliver me, for God not to deliver you is impossible. Why? Because that's not who he is. It is incompatible and inconsistent with the character and the nature of a loving and merciful God. He will deliver you. Our problem can't come soon enough. And so we plead with God, would to God, that all of our pleas are on the basis, and there's nothing wrong with this. In fact, there's everything right with this. To say, God, I know you love me, you're merciful, and I appeal to you on that basis. Your mercies, your tender mercies that endure forever. The fifth one, verse 5. God is the God of new hope. Now here, it's like, if you didn't think it could get any worse, I mean, by about verse 4, I'm pretty much done. I'm just like, you know, I'm on my face. Oh God, why are you doing this to your servant David? This must be so. I mean, we're reading it on the pages of our Bible. He lived it. And we live it too, to some degree or another. But here in verse 5, he's in such despair that he starts thinking of his own death. This is the low point for David. And it's not uncommon to think in this way. When one is given over to despair, this is in our fallen humanness, in our frailty and weakness, this is what happens. I think about Job. By the way, he's in very good company. Remember when we were studying through the book of Job? And there was that point where Job just said, the one thing I desire the most, God withholds from me. He's speaking of his death. God taking his life. He even goes as far as saying it would have been better that I was never born in the first place. That's despair. I think of something that Oswald Chambers once said. God never faults a man for despair. Some of the greatest men and even women of God, mightily used of God, came to this place of utter and total despair, despairing of life. The Apostle Paul despaired of life. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 through 10. He writes, "For we do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, of our trouble, which came to us in Asia, that we were burdened beyond measure, above strength, so that we despaired even of life. Yes, we had the sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead." And then he says this, verse 10, "who delivered us from so great a death, and does deliver us, in whom we trust, that he will still deliver us." Do you get the impression that God's going to deliver us? It's because he is. He can't not. I know that's not a proper sentence structure, but it's true. He can't not deliver us. That's not who He is. He has to, He will deliver us. The sixth one in verses 6 and 7. I want to spend a little bit of time on this. Now, again, it just keeps getting worse. David is so emotionally and even physically broken down. All he can do now is cry all night, every night, soaking his bed with his tears. You ever had nights like that? I have. Sleep escapes you. No cannot. And it's one of those times where you can't even really pray. All you can do is moan and groan and cry. Someone called them liquid prayers. And actually, sometimes liquid prayers can be more powerful than actual prayers. To me, this speaks to the important value, and I want you to hang on to that word for a moment, the value of brokenness. In the sense that God is close to those who are broken, contrite, humble. The proud He resists. He knows from afar off. You ever thought about that? That the reason why God is close to the humble is because God Himself is humble. Here's an all-powerful God, all-knowing God, all-present God, creator of the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that in them is. He doesn't just have power, He has all power. He is all power, but yet He's humble. And that's why He's repulsed by pride. That's why He cannot even just get away from me. He resists the proud. But for the humble, He gives grace. Now, let's talk about this issue of value. Isn't it true that we don't value broken things? If it's broken, we throw it away, we replace it. I mean, nowadays, everything's disposable anyways. You don't fix it. It's cheaper to buy a new one. What's up with that? Have you noticed that? The thing breaks, it's kind of like, oh, now what am I going to do? It's not like there's a repair shop down the street anymore. Back in the day, there was. Hey, your TV breaks down? Let it. No, sorry, I don't know where that came from. That was, okay, Lord. Blessed. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's, anyway. You don't fix it anymore. Because the cost, here's a perfect example. Okay. Thank God they don't require this talent and skill in heaven. It should be criminal for me to have tools in my hands. I mean, just the simplest of repairs, forget it. By the time I'm done with it, it's so much worse than when I started. True story. This is pretty recent too. It was over the Thanksgiving holiday. Our microwave, you know the light they have in the microwave? Well, it burned out. And it's an older one. It's probably 10, 15 years old now. So here I am to save the day. I got the replacement bulb, and I'm going to, with a screwdriver, unscrew it, and, and it comes down and breaks. Of course it does. And then I go to unscrew the bulb, and then it came out too easy. I'm like, whoa, that was easy. And then I look at it. It was just the bulb. The socket, still in there. So what do? Being the brilliant, I'm so smart when it comes to this. I'm trying to, with the electricity on. Oh, God is, I feel so sorry for the angels given charge concerning me. I owe them an apology. When I get to heaven, they're going to go, yeah! I'm so sorry. Man, we had to work overtime, double shifts with you all the time. Anyway, here the electricity's on, and I'm trying. Okay, maybe if I take and you can't get to it. Oh, they put it in the far back. It's like you've got to, and then you got to get your head in there, and you can't because it doesn't fit, especially when you have a fat head like me. And so you get in there, and you're trying to get this thing out, and so you've got the pliers, and then it bends, and then it breaks off apart. Then you get a screwdriver. That's real smart right there. You stick it in there, and you're trying to edge it and take it out. And then it did come out. The whole thing. I mean, the whole socket came out. And then I hear this spark and poof, and then the breaker goes off. I thought I've completely fried the microwave. So I call up the appliance repair guy. This guy knows me. We're very good friends. I should have called him first. I said, hey, what's it going to cost me to repair the socket in this microwave? And he's like, you're kidding me, right? I said, what do you mean? He said, I don't work on microwaves anymore. I said, why not? He said, just buy a new one. Really? For a 12-cent bulb? That ain't right. So he said, no, here's what you do. You just get another light. You forget that light, and you just, install that. It took me a day and a half to do that. But anyway, that's enough of my problems. Broken things. That was actually a very profound point at one point. We don't value broken things, but God does. God places a high value on brokenness. In fact, throughout Scripture, what you'll find is that the blessing always comes subsequent to the brokenness. You'll never see the brokenness that comes after the blessing, or before the blessing. It just doesn't happen. The blessing doesn't. I completely botched that. I better quit while I'm ahead. When we're broken before the Lord, cry out to the Lord. The voice of our cry is hearkened to by the Lord. Notice in verse 7, we're actually given more detail because he makes mention of all of his enemies. And it seems that the grief and the sorrow from his enemies had caused him to weep so hard that his eyes had become feeble. Have you ever just wept so bitterly that your eyes burn just from crying so much? One of the things I'm learning in my own walk with the Lord is that emotional pain takes a heavy toll on physical health. Well, this brings us to the last one in verses 8 through 10. This is where everything changes, and not a moment too soon, I might add. David turns a corner, and instead of crying out to the Lord, he's speaking out to his enemies. And I love this because it's kind of like David saying this to his enemies. You're in trouble now. You know why you're in trouble? Because the Lord heard my cry. The Lord heard my supplication. And you're going to get it now. Because you were the source of all of my grief and my sorrow and my pain. You piled on when I was down. And is that not true of the enemy? He always attacks when we're discouraged and down and exhausted, physically tired, emotionally discouraged. That's when he pounces. That's when he attacks. That's when he piles on. And David says to his enemies, and he continues in verse 9, boldly telling them that the Lord has not only heard his supplication, but will, that's a key word, receive his prayer. That's interesting because it's like He's not saying this in the past or the present tense, that the Lord received my prayer. That would be past tense. The Lord is receiving my prayer. That's present tense. No, he doesn't say it like that either. He says the Lord will, future tense, receive my prayer. That's faith. That's faith. Faith, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. Notice, too, that he's so confident that he says, you're going to depart from me. You're going to, and then he calls them, you workers of iniquity. And in verse 10, he says, you're the ones that are going to be greatly troubled. You greatly troubled me. You're in trouble now. You're going to be greatly troubled. Because God heard and hearkened unto the voice of my cry.